A fishing boat materializes in the middle of the Pacific, perfectly intact, completely empty, with no sign of the 5 men who were supposed to be aboard. In 1979, the Sarah Joe was a 38-foot fishing vessel registered in Hawaii. She was sound, she was seaworthy. On September 14th, 5 experienced fishermen, Warren Soper, Ralph Malaikal, Elmer Mizony, Bernardino Halluck and his son departed from Pohnpei State, heading for the rich fishing grounds near Karsri. They had a cargo hold and a mission. What they didn't have was a return date anyone could depend on. The men made a calculated choice. They knew the route, they knew their boat, they knew the window, a few days of work before the weather window closed. But the Pacific doesn't negotiate, it doesn't care about schedules or competence. By September 17th, the Sarah Joe and her crew had vanished into the water. No distress call, no wreckage, no bodies, just absence. Families waited, Coast Guard cutters deployed, search planes crisscrossed hundreds of square miles of open water. The cost of that search was measured in fuel, hours, and hope, and it yielded nothing. By late September, officials made another decision. They called it off. The men were presumed dead. The boat was presumed lost. The file closed. But the Pacific keeps secrets, and sometimes it gives them back. In 1989, 10 years later, a weather station operator on Taongi, an uninhabited atoll in the Marshall Islands, made a discovery. The Sarah Joe. She was sitting in the lagoon intact. Her hull wasn't breached. Her engine wasn't seized. She was floating like she'd just been moored there yesterday. But the crew was gone, all of them. Every trace of the 5 men had evaporated. The distance between Pohnpei and Taongi is roughly 400 nautical miles. The Sarah Joe had drifted or been carried across open ocean, past shipping lanes, past inhabited islands, to an atoll so remote that few people even knew it existed. And she'd done it without sinking, without breaking apart, without any evidence of the catastrophe that must have claimed 5 lives. When salvage teams finally boarded her, they found supplies still aboard. Tools, personal effects. The galley had food, the bunk had bedding, everything was in place except the men. It was as if the crew had simply ceased to exist. No violence, no signs of struggle, no indication of what decision, what moment, what split-second choice had separated 5 skilled fishermen from their boat. The leading theory, a catastrophic wave. A rogue swell, the kind that appears without warning in deep ocean. One massive surge could have washed men overboard before they could react, before they could grab a line, before they could even call for help. It would have cost them seconds, and the ocean only needs seconds. But that's not certainty, that's inference. That's analysts looking at a boat and a missing crew and trying to reverse engineer the moment of impact. What we know is this: 5 men made a choice to go fishing. They had experience, they had a seaworthy vessel. They had no way to predict the Pacific's decision to take them. The Sarah Joe herself was salvaged, towed back to port and eventually scrapped. But her ghost remained, because she'd proven something unsettling. A vessel can survive what kills its crew. A boat can be spared while the men who built her, sailed her, trusted her are taken. The ocean doesn't balance equations, it doesn't care about fairness. For the families, the discovery of the boat meant something different than closure. It meant confirmation. It meant their men had genuinely vanished, not in some abstract way, but in a specific moment, in a specific place, under specific conditions they may never fully understand. The Sarah Joe became evidence of absence. The case was never solved. The decisions that led 5 men into the Pacific in 1979 were rational by the standards of the day. The boat was reliable, the route was known, the risk was calculated and accepted, and then the ocean made its own calculation, one that didn't factor in human skill, experience, or hope. The Sarah Joe drifted for a decade before she was found. In that time, the families lived with uncertainty. The authorities moved on. The Pacific kept its secret. And when the boat finally surfaced, it answered almost nothing. It just made the mystery heavier and more real. This is the pattern of disappearances at sea. A decision made under pressure, a moment when everything changes, and then silence. The ocean doesn't leave a transcript, it doesn't file a report, it just takes what it wants and lets us guess at the rest. Subscribe, there's a new unsolved case every week. Subscribe, there's a new unsolved case every week.